Hey there, cosmic explorers! Ever wondered if the Apollo 11 moon landing was the real deal or a blockbuster Hollywood plot? Well, buckle up, because today we're diving deep into the Apollo 11 moon landing mystery. Imagine a world where the moon landing was a carefully crafted show, a backup plan for a failed mission. But hold on, we've got mind-blowing facts, debunked theories, and hidden lunar treasures that'll have you on the edge of your seat. Stick around, because the truth is more fascinating than fiction. Ready for a journey into the unknown? Let's unveil the Apollo 11 moon landing mystery together. Picture this. It's the late 1950s, and the US and the Soviet Union are locked in the Cold War, racing against each other in every way possible. In 1957, the Soviets stunned the world by launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, into Earth's orbit. The US felt the pressure and responded in 1958 with their own satellite. However, in 1961, the Soviets scored another win when Yuri Gagarin became the first person to journey into space. This compelled President John F. Kennedy to take action. Just 1 week after Gagarin's historic flight, Kennedy penned a letter to his vice president, contemplating how the US could outpace the Soviets in the space race. Kennedy's solution? A bold announcement in a famous 1961 speech where he promised not only to land a man on the moon before the decade's end, but also to bring them back safely.
This nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space.
Keep in mind, this was a time without smartphones, the internet, or modern computing power. Over the next 5 years, Kennedy allocated a substantial $9 billion to NASA for this ambitious lunar goal. The space agency embarked on a series of meticulous tests, starting with rockets, heat shields, and propulsion systems. Tragically, the Apollo 1 mission in 1967 ended in a fatal fire during a pre-flight test. Despite this setback, NASA persevered, conducting unmanned missions like Apollo 4, Apollo 5, and Apollo 6 for rigorous testing. In October 1968, Apollo 7 marked the successful return of humans to space. Soon after, Apollo 8 ventured near the moon in December 1968, followed by Apollo 9 testing the lunar module in March 1969. Then came Apollo 10 in May 1969, a dress rehearsal for Apollo 11. This mission simulated almost everything except the actual moon landing. NASA's rapid succession of tests showcased their determination. Finally, on July 16, 1969, the historic Apollo 11 mission was launched, culminating in the iconic moon landing. Apollo 11 mission. 3 brave astronauts were on board: Neil Armstrong, the 38-year-old commander leading the mission; Michael Collins, the command module pilot; and Edwin Buzz Aldrin, the lunar module pilot. These names are now part of history, but not everyone knows Michael Collins' story. We'll get to that in a bit. The spacecraft had 3 parts: the command module, service module, and lunar module. The first 2 are called CSM, short for command and service module. The plan was to detach the lunar module, land it on the moon, and then reconnect it for the trip back to Earth. To launch this cool spacecraft, they used a big Saturn V5 rocket, loaded with kerosene, liquid oxygen, and liquid hydrogen, making it weigh a whopping 3 million kilograms. In under 10 minutes, the spacecraft reached Earth's orbit. After a few orbits, Mission Control on Earth gave the green light for translunar injection, taking the spacecraft from Earth's orbit toward the Moon's orbit. The Saturn V5 rocket did its job within 5 hours of launch, but reaching the Moon took a few days, during which the astronauts ate, slept, and snapped pictures inside the spacecraft. Fast forward to July 19, 1969. After traveling nearly 400,000 kilometers, the Apollo 11 spacecraft entered the Moon's orbit. It split into 2 parts: the command and service module, nicknamed Columbia, with Michael Collins, and the lunar module, nicknamed Eagle, with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Here's where it gets interesting. Only Armstrong and Aldrin were going to walk on the moon. Collins had to stay in the command module in orbit. This is probably why many people don't know much about Collins, even though he played a crucial role. At around 8 p.m., the lunar module was set to land on the moon. At 8:10 p.m., alarms beeped, 12:01 and 12:02 alarms. Armstrong and Aldrin were confused, but kept going after Mission Control told them to ignore it. Later, they learned it was a warning about the guidance computer being overloaded. Luckily, the computer could still handle the essential programs for the mission. Armstrong took control at 150 meters, steering away from big rocks, and they changed the landing spot to a safer one. At 8:16 p.m., with only 5% fuel left, they landed successfully. Armstrong's historic moonwalk was watched by 650 million people on TV. Aldrin joined him, and for the next 2.5 hours, they did experiments, took pictures, and collected moon samples. Despite the Cold War playing a big role in the moon landing, the mission had scientific goals. They set up a moon TV camera, measured solar winds, sent laser beams to Earth for distance calculation, and even had a seismometer for moonquakes. They collected 23 kilograms of moon rocks, left an American flag, and a plate saying, "Here, men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969, AD." It was a giant leap for humankind. So the lunar module had to chill on the moon for 21 hours. After that, it needed to take off and link up with the Command and Service Module, CSM. But guess what? There was a little hiccup. The engine switch broke off when Armstrong and Aldrin were getting out. When they came back, they were like, "Oops." They told Mission Control about the broken switch and started brainstorming solutions. Here's the kicker: they needed something to complete an electrical circuit. Buzz Aldrin, the quick thinker, spotted his trusty ballpoint pen, and voila! He used it to get that engine going again. Crisis averted. With the lunar module back on track, the three amigos pointed their spacecraft towards Earth. Now, the re-entry plan was a bit tricky. They had to separate the command module and the service module. The service module was supposed to take a one-way trip into Earth's atmosphere, but there was a snag. Those thrusters meant to push the service module away from the command module. Yeah, they decided to take a nap. So, as they were heading home, the astronauts realized those thrusters weren't doing their job. Cue the drama. The service module started breaking apart. Debris was everywhere, like a cosmic confetti party. Now, you'd think this was a recipe for disaster, but miraculously, the broken pieces didn't crash into the command module. Close call. President Nixon even had a backup speech ready, just in case the worst happened. Imagine this alternate reality speech where he's saying, "Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace." Scary stuff, right? Luckily, they didn't need that speech. The command module glided through Earth's atmosphere, parachutes popped, and it gently landed in the ocean. All three astronauts were safe and sound. Rescue ships scooped them up from the water. Talk about a Hollywood-worthy ending. Oh, and here's a quirky twist. The astronauts got a 2-week vacation in quarantine after returning. No mingling with other humans, just in case they brought back some crazy moon germs. Thankfully, nothing happened, and the guys were okay. Apollo 11's moon landing rocked headlines worldwide. President Kennedy's dream of humans on the moon by the end of the decade became a reality, thanks to NASA. Despite all the hiccups, these space pioneers triumphed, making history and keeping us on the edge of our seats. So imagine this. Some folks raise eyebrows and say, "Hold on, did America really land on the moon right before the 70s started? Seems a bit fishy, right?" They even toss around the idea that the moon landing was a big fake show during the Cold War. Picture this. The real mission flops, and they cook up a fake one just to save face globally. Wild, huh? But hey, let's play detective. These moon landing conspiracy theories get thrown around a lot. But guess what? They've been proven wrong multiple times. If it was all a Hollywood-style trick, the Soviets wouldn't have given a nod, right? Surprised they did. The Great Soviet Encyclopedia, in its 3rd edition, shouted out the moon landing was a real deal. Soviet articles even ranked it as the 3rd space-age historic event after Sputnik and Yuri Gagarin's flight. Now, about that flag on the moon, why was it waving? No air on the moon, right? Well, it turns out Armstrong and Aldrin took a special flag with a horizontal rod, so it always looked extended. Yet, during Apollo 11, they faced some glitches, and the rod didn't fully cooperate, creating those ripples. It's not fluttering, It's just doing a little moon dance. Next up is the Starry Night controversy. Some say stars should be in the pictures, but guess what? It was daytime on the moon. Sunlight was painting the scene, and those reflective white spacesuits were like a mirror ball. Cameras of that time couldn't peek past reflections. Even today's phone cameras struggle with stars in flash photos at night. Shadow skeptics come in with angles all over the place. They argue with multiple light sources, like a Hollywood set. But nope, the sun wasn't the solo act. The moon's surface added its glow. Light scattering in every direction made those quirky shadows. A head-scratcher involves a picture where Armstrong's holding a camera and capturing Aldrin's reflection. The twist? No hands. The camera was strapped to Armstrong's suit, and he operated it from there. As for Neil's lunar descent pictures, multiple cameras on the lunar module played paparazzi. Shaking off these wacky theories, let's talk real talk. Not everyone threw confetti for the moon landing. Critics threw shade at NASA and the government for dropping billions when there were real-world issues. Education, inequality, and Vietnam War repercussions. People questioned the moon mission's hefty price tag. But guess what? The moon landing was like a hidden treasure chest. It birthed advancements in computer chips. NASA's demand for integrated circuits dropped chip prices, making them more accessible for everyday tech. It was a live test. If they could trust these chips with astronauts, they were good for daily life. Fast forward to today, and we're looking back at a mission that shook the world. Apollo 11 was more than just a giant leap for mankind. It paved the way for tech revolutions. Yet, after Apollo 17 in 1972, the moon became a lonely place. No visitors for almost 50 years. Why the pause? The Apollo program was a pricey affair, involving over 400,000 brains and a jaw-dropping $24 billion back then. Today, that's over $100 billion. Initially hailed by some, the moon magic faded as real-world problems took the stage. But hold on, the moon's calling again. NASA's Artemis program is gearing up. Unmanned rocket tests kick off the action, leading to a big plan. The first woman on the moon by 2025 to 2026. After that, a person of color will follow suit. Brace yourselves, friends. Before this decade wraps up, we'll be witnessing humans setting foot on the moon once again. If you enjoyed this journey through history, make sure to hit that like button, share with fellow enthusiasts, and subscribe for more captivating tales.